Former President Jacob Zuma will have to pay an estimated 6 to 10 million rands in legal costs dating back to the attempt to block then Public Protector Thuli Madonsela's report on state capture. His bid to appeal the order that he and not the state is personally liable for these legal costs was struck off the roll today. eNCA reporter Masego Rahlaga followed proceedings, and she joins us live now. Masego, proceedings were very short. What was the reason for that?
Well, Omar, really, it was quite a simple reason for that, really, because the former president didn't file his application for leave to appeal, so those documents were not filed in the Constitutional Court. He also didn't file his heads of argument, so that meant that the case couldn't sit for long, and on top of that, his lawyer also pulled out of the case, so that meant that him, as an applicant, couldn't even be in the Constitutional Court to represent himself or for anybody to represent him. And it also meant that all the respondents, which is about 8 of them, including political parties, could not prepare a counter-argument because there was no argument that came forward from President Jacob Zuma. So essentially the court sat, they decided that he's missed the deadline, so we're just going to sit anyway and hear this out. And when they arrived there, Omar, it was so quick. It was, I think, less than 5 minutes long, where the Deputy Chief Justice, the acting Deputy Chief Justice, asked each of the respondents what they'd like to happen in the case, and all of them simply said one thing, and it's what we're going to hear from the EFF's counsel right now.
The court will be aware that we collectively take the attitude that this application, as it stands before the court today, is fatally defective, and that it should be struck from the roll with costs. And certainly in the position of my client, it should be struck with the costs of 2 counsel where so employed.
And it's not the first time that it looks like the president is disrespecting the law. Why does this continue? Why is it allowed to continue?
Omar, you know, it's quite disappointing. You find organizations, for instance, such as Respect Our Constitution, etc., launching and saying that, you know, a former statesman cannot act the way that the former president is currently acting. You remember that in the Constitutional Court, the same court, the highest court in the land, had ordered him that he needed to go continue his testimony at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry. He refused to do that, and so the Commission of Inquiry had to then apply for the Constitutional Court to find him in contempt and possibly send him to jail. He still didn't bother appearing at that court, in the highest court of the land, on that day that that hearing was supposed to be heard. He didn't even bother bringing in his application or his arguments to the court. So the court case that day went ahead without argument from him. And eventually, when he did actually bring forth some of his arguments, Omar, was that he was basically saying that where he's standing, the law is not fair against him. He felt as if even the Constitutional Court judges would not be fair against him. They'd be biased against him. He says that he's already been found guilty before there's anything before he could even be questioned about the allegations that have been leveled against him. And then you'd remember in terms of his criminal case with Thales that's happening at the Pietermaritzburg High Court. The former president also speaking outside of the High Court, talking about how he is going to argue that the state's prosecution is not fit for that trial because it's going to be bias against him. And he said outside court, actually, Omar, that he will not continue with the case unless the court hears his case out. So we're seeing a former statesman who's threatening the judiciary to say that you need to listen to me before I can sit in that dock and you listen to what I have to say. But I did speak to a political analyst, Eusebius Makaiza, who also spoke about especially this part of a former statesman making the country seem like there are people who are in fact above the law.
The ultimate test of whether or not the rule of law has been animated in any country is precisely whether all citizens are equal before a court of law, including a former first citizen. And as you rightly pointed out, in a different matter in the Constitutional Court related to his ongoing woes with the State Capture Commission, he's also been a complete no-show. So there's a pattern here of the former president habitually demonstrating to the courts and to society at large that he doesn't give a damn about the fact that we live in a country where we have traded parliamentary sovereignty for constitutional supremacy, which is why it's so important for all of the courts, as the Concord has done again today, to find without fear or favor or political prejudice on the merits of the issues before them, rather than caring for the political consequences. You and I can deal with the political consequences in society at large, but no judicial officer should take into account what the political consequences will be of administering justice and doing so to the letter of the law, as happened appropriately today again.
So, Masego, where does President Zuma, ex-President Zuma, go to from here?
He has nowhere else to go, to be honest, Omar. The Constitutional Court is the highest court in the land, and the decision that they take means that that punitive cost decision by the High Court in Pretoria in 2017 still stands, which was upholded by the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein, and the former statesman taking the case to the Constitutional Court was supposed to be his last bid. So he has already exercised all his other legal avenues, and he failed in that regard, and failing of appearing before the Constitutional Court today meant that they struck it off the roll with cost, and it basically means that he has more money that he needs to now spend in terms of all his legal woes.